GroundUp is a podcast for mold breakers,
risk takers,
hustlers,
and trailblazers. We're going to be telling the stories of exceptional and entrepreneurial people on the stories that define their lives.
It's those fuck it moments.
when they took that leap of faith.
The people that wear both their failures and successes on their sleeves.
It's a raw and unfiltered narrative.
It's both the good and the bad of building a movement from the ground up.
We think it's going to be fun. Tune in. GroundUp. All right, here we are. Welcome, everybody. This is episode 6. We're here with the GroundUp team in Brooklyn.
BK, baby.
BK, day 2, New York. We're here for the whole week again. And we've been having a blast. I think we can all say that we fucking love Brooklyn.
Brooklyn's the best. This is my first time spending time here. We had a great night last night. We even got house cat out of bed this morning for a little early morning gym session.
We got juice. We walked around last night like we were like tourists in Europe.
You got juice. I got a bagel with extra cream cheese.
Bagel with lox. No, honestly, Williamsburg is so relaxing. And I was just talking to these guys about how we're coming up from Boston, or coming down, and coming to one of the busiest cities on earth has made us feel more relaxed than we are in Boston. So I'm loving life right now.
Yeah, I'm loving life. We've
absolutely loving
had
it.
a blast. I think people come to New York from Manhattan, right? But then they stay for Brooklyn, which is my little thing I tweeted today.
Nice.
So
That's a good tweet.
okay, so before we get started, I want to do a quick 360 of our surroundings right now. Yesterday, we were in our Brooklyn Airbnb, and today we are actually in a tiny house. Can you just get a whole look at this? Tiny house, fitted, loft bed. What kind of wood is this, John?
This is Eastern White Pine.
Yes.
Eastern White
That
Pine.
sounds fancy.
We are actually in a getaway house in the alley of Brooklyn, Prince Street. An alley in Prince Street. We were in a tiny house filming actually with the founder of Getaway, which is so fitting. Blessed, straight up blessed. We are so excited to be here. So without further ado, I think we should just introduce our guests and get right into this conversation because it's going to be so much fun. So I'd like to introduce our 6th guest of GroundUp. 6 is a big number. I'm really excited to have you here. So Jon Staff, welcome.
Thank you.
We're so excited to have you.
You are overselling this tiny house. So for those who are not watching at home, this is our worst tiny house. It's almost garbage. There's a reason it's in Brooklyn. We're in Trash Alley. This wasn't good enough to be a street. This used to be a New York public street, and they shut it down. And we just parked this here 8 months ago, and they haven't even bothered to ticket us.
Are you serious?
That's the garbage alley we're in.
I love it.
All right, well, you're here. We're in a garbage getaway.
I appreciate the props, though.
Okay, great. Well, so John is the founder and CEO of Getaway. For those of you who don't know, Getaway is a platform that allows you to book cabins in the woods. So you guys design houses, place them in the woods, and then rent them out by the night, for the weekend, during the week, to folks looking to escape from their daily grind, which is such an awesome mission. The houses are gorgeous. Sam, our 4th team member, has gone to one. I've been dying to go to one, just haven't had time, which is such a juxtaposition about what the brand is about, but I'm going to make time. But John, we're super excited to have you here. So I kind of want to just ask, how did it all get started? This is what we asked our guests a lot, right? What was the starting point? What got you into the entrepreneurial journey? Childhood, something that happened, in school? What was it?
We want to go way back to childhood,
well,
therapy style.
Yeah.
I'm 3 years old.
Close your eyes.
Honest to God, I'm 3 years old. My parents own a bar in a one-street town. The street in the town ends. My parents have the bar at the end of the street in the town in the one-street town where the street ends. It burns down. But before it burns down, I'm 3 years old making change, sitting next to the taps. And so I grew up in this small business environment, and I grew up in the middle of nowhere where it was easy to have a campfire, see the stars, be outside, be in nature. And then I moved to Boston. And after I moved to Boston, I moved to New York. Mm-hmm. And so it became a lot harder to be in nature. So,
and that was always something that you wanted.
Always wanted to get back to nature. I love the city. I love being around arts, culture, music, people, whatever. Mm-hmm. But I was born in the woods basically, so I wanted to get back to that. And I had this small business background, so when college ended, my buddy talked me into starting a company with him, and I was hooked.
Mm-hmm. So what company was that? That wasn't Getaway, right?
No, so a couple companies before this.
Yeah.
the biggest one that's still around was called Breathable Foods. So it was founded by a Harvard professor, and two of us, of his students, helped start this company. It was totally bizarre. Like, the product, we had patented the only inhaler that delivered particles to your mouth rather than your lungs.
Wow.
Which is not necessary. Like, it was cool. Nice.
That's Sam
Sam's
waving his
blasting
inhaler.
us with an inhaler. It was super cool. Like, I learned a lot. We went, from two people sitting in a cafe where I was saying, like, when does this turn into a real company, to we got this thing called a Series A, which I'd never heard of, and suddenly we're 40 people. And I'm going, who are all these people? What are they doing? Like, why are we spending all this money? But that was my, like, crash course in entrepreneurship. I left there because I wanted to do that, like, let's work out of a cafe thing again, and let's, work on something new and try to create something. So I partnered up with a board member and a couple of other folks and started a mobile app company because that was trendy. That's really the only reason. I was like, what are all the cool kids doing?
Yeah. It's like
so
blockchain companies now, right?
Yeah, exactly. I'm thinking about turning Getaway into a blockchain company. Is that a good idea?
Everyone has an
Let's put
ICO.
tiny houses on
Can
the
we do an
blockchain.
ICO right now? Does anyone have any coins to offer me? And is that good? So I did this mobile tech startup, and then, like, that didn't work at all. And the cliche is you learn more in failure than you do in success, and I think
Absolutely.
that's true. But it still sucks.
Yeah.
So I was burned out.
Yeah.
And, burned out from, yes, working hard, but also just burned out from, like I kind of woke up one day, I had this, I think, classic mid-20s experience of, I don't really care. I'm, like, working really hard, and I don't care what I'm working on. But by this point, I'd fallen in love with starting companies, and so I really set out on an explicit mission to figure out, okay, what's a company I can start that I want to work on for 2 decades? And it wasn't obvious what that was. Braver people would have quit their jobs and just figured out what that company was. I went to business school instead, which entrepreneurs aren't supposed to do, but that bought me the time to come up with an idea, tinker with it enough to figure out if I cared about it first of all, and then get it to a place where it was fundable.
So do you believe that company that you started that you didn't have energy for, was that one of your defining failures that kind of changed your mindset
Totally.
about what you wanted
Yeah.
to start? How did that change your mindset about what company you wanted to start or what you wanted to do?
The thing I learned was we're all individual people with our own interests and motivations, and I don't think there's a way to get excited about what other people get excited about. And so if you're excited, like, facetiousness aside, if you're excited about blockchain, like, hell yeah, go start a blockchain company and, like, pour all your time and energy into it. And that passion and interest that is intrinsic to you will get you through so many moments where there's nobody around to help you. And but that's not what I was interested in. So the thing I learned is, okay, I've got to figure out what is that thing that I care about enough that, when investors turn me down, when people don't want to join the team, when the metrics aren't looking good, I just go, you know what? I'm going to keep plugging away because I care about this thing so much. And that like sounds lofty and like I should give a graduation speech or something, but but like it's much more practical than that. It's because in a given moment you go like, okay, this sucks right now. Do I want to quit it and do something else? And I think the secret is try to pick an idea where you don't think you're going to want to quit it. Like, there were moments I popped my head up and, like, I was at Harvard Business School, which I was privileged to be able to go to. And, like, 2 times I opened up the job boards. And I'm like, oh, all my friends are, like, doing these jobs and they're going to be paid all this money. Let me look what's there. And it's just, like, everything sucked. It's like, I don't want to do any of these things. And therefore, I'm going to keep, like, working on this cabins in the woods thing.
Yeah, which is such a founder mentality, right? You just derive energy
Oh, yeah.
from what you're building, being able to sit down and just work on that. It's,
Absolutely.
like your passion and stuff like that. So that obviously was your mindset shift, right? So talk to me about, so also, quickly, you also lived in an Airstream, right?
I've lived in a bunch of weird places.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's that being one of them.
That being one of them. So I lived for a long time on a boat on Lake Superior. I lived in the basement of a frozen yogurt shop I opened during college when I got bored with college. I think
that's the best one.
Yeah.
That's better than the Airstream.
I lived illegally in the college library while we renovated the frozen yogurt shop.
No kidding.
What do you
I
mean?
meant to say surreptitiously because they might take my degree away.
Yeah.
Lived there for 3 months while we renovated. My parents lived there with us for 3 weeks who
In the
came out to help
library?
renovate in the library.
How did you? Hold on. Let's back up real quick. How did you do that? Just blanket.
So this
couch?
library had some student group offices that weren't real offices. They were like more than a cubicle, but less than a room. And we just told somebody, we've got some very important student group activities to pursue for the summer. And so they gave us swipe access. But it only worked from 8 a.m. to 11 p.m. So any night we wanted to go out, we had to just prop the door open and hope, which somehow worked. So my buddy, we being my buddy who I started the frozen yogurt thing with, and I lived there for 3 months, got away with it. Then we moved into the basement of the yogurt shop once we got that done. And he went back and took a nap in the library, and they came with like all the security guards and the administrators. And they're like, "You're living here."
And you were like, nope.
We're like, "No, we're not."
And you got away with it.
Yeah.
That's like a Scooby-Doo moment. You know what I mean? Like they go and you're like, ha ha ha, at the basement of the frozen yogurt store. Like, we got you.
It's also, that is just like epic entrepreneurial drive and just like understanding that it doesn't start with starting a company and then you have a fancy apartment. It starts with sleeping in the library, sleeping in a basement.
But at the time, it was great, right? Because I'm like a college student. I'm saving all this money. The library had air conditioning. The library had a lounge with like cable TV. I watched the entire West Wing twice that summer, probably. Like, it was the best college living I had.
I love that.
In the library.
Yeah.
Okay, so you lived in a lot of weird places, right? So did that like brew your love for tiny houses? Tell me how you started with Getaway.
Yeah, and then I lived, after I was wrapping up this one company and helping a friend start another, I just started, a friend actually, it said, I think I want to live in an Airstream. And my friend was busy working for somebody else, and I said, well, that sounds like a pretty good dream. Maybe I should do that. And so I stole his dream, and then maybe he'll still do it. Good luck to him. But I just started lying to people that I was going to live in an Airstream, but not in a malicious way. Just I wasn't doing anything about it. Yeah. But I started telling, and I think there's probably an entrepreneurial lesson in here. But I just kept telling people like, I'm going to go live in an Airstream now. And after I told like 25 people, one of my friends said, oh, well, I have a friend who has an Airstream. So I call up that person, never met her before. And Bianca says, well, take mine.
Oh, Bianca.
It sounds like you were convincing yourself. You were convincing yourself that you wanted to live in an Airstream.
Creating the circumstances to make it true. And then I said, oh, Bianca's given me this thing, so I guess I have to go live on the road now. So I did. And the rule was have it back by Burning Man. So I had 5 months. I did about 8,000 miles through the West, Taos, New Mexico, Bozeman, Montana, the western shore of Oregon. And it was amazing. Gosh. And on that trip, was clearing my head and like thinking about myself.
Because this was after the burnout too, right?
Yeah, I was like trying to figure out what I was going to do with my life. But also in Montana, discovered tiny houses and said, okay, I get what these things are about. I get the idea of living life around experiences rather than stuff. But I also had this startup background, and so was thinking about how do we look at this? Is there a way to look at this tiny house as a piece of hardware that we can scale a company around? How do we create a scalable company around this?
So that's, you incepted kind of the idea on your travels. Yeah.
Yes.
And so
I'm nodding like.
Yeah. So you started. So that's awesome too, because that's what I'm going on a road trip actually in 3 weeks. I think I'm going to Grand Teton, Yellowstone, and I'm like so excited because it's just that time to go and think, and see the stars and enjoy the nature. And I think that's one of the greatest things that Getaway provides. But Getaway makes us realize that we need that. Yeah. Which I think is really cool. So talk to how you got started with Getaway. Yeah. Because you founded it out of HBS, right? Yes. And you literally built it from the ground up. Like, you built the first cabin.
Such a crazy idea. And I just couldn't, like, now it's like still a crazy idea, but it's a little bit more validated. But at the time it didn't make any sense. But I scrapped together a little bit of money. God bless those early investors.
Yeah.
Like, truly delusional investors, delusional entrepreneur, right? Like, doesn't make any sense to give me your money. They believed in me and gave me a little bit of money. And we built 3, and that was the pilot. We rented a dump in Boston under the Tobin Bridge, month to month, and I got my dad to fly out from Minnesota. I said, Dad, could you please build us a tiny house? And so he did. We hired a couple of like hipster carpenters from Cambridge, who would like build all day and then like play bluegrass at night. It was one of the best times of my life. Like, what a dream.
Sam's like, that's me.
I want to live that life. But we built these 3, and we stuck them in the woods of New Hampshire. I'm not a real estate person. I don't know anything about hospitality, especially then. But I wrote to everybody on Craigslist that was trying to sell their land, and I said, I can't buy your land, but would you rent it to me instead? And somebody actually a couple people rented me their land. And I wrote these leases that were, I don't think they were a page. I think they were less than a page. You wrote the lease. I wrote the lease, yeah. Yeah, Jon Staff, Esquire. Like, land John, $250 a month or something. And we just stuck think about the liability. Yeah. Think about the insurance. Think about,
the stuff that you are thinking about now that you have to deal with when you scale it.
Yeah. And so, but we stuck them in the woods, had no idea what could happen. Again, this company was my friend Pete, who I started it with, and I very clearly, this was for us. Mm-hmm. We're burned out. We want to go to the woods. We don't have the time or interest in, flying to the Caribbean or the Galapagos or, can't go to Yellowstone. We just need a place to go.
Yeah.
And hopefully it's in the woods and quiet and beautiful and nobody bothers us. And there's no Wi-Fi. We HBS will say, do market research. And it's what market research are you going to do?
Yeah.
Our market research was, let's see if anybody else likes it. Mm-hmm. And so we stuck these 3 in the woods, and we're very, genuinely pleasantly surprised and fortunate that, the media covered it.
Yeah.
And which was not obvious, right? We thought it was cool, but on the other hand, it's cabins, and cabins have been around for 500 years, 1,000 years. So fortunately, folks covered it, and more importantly, people came, and more important than that, people liked it. Mm-hmm. So we screwed a lot of stuff up. I don't mean to make it that was the number of things we messed up.
Like what?
Well, starting with the house, right? I talked about I really think it's necessary to be delusional, actually delusional. Yeah. You can't fake delusion.
You have to.
And one of my delusions was, I can build these houses for $10,000. And that's what I pitched those first investors on. I think I might have pitched them on $5,000, but I know I sold them on $10,000. Turns out it's about $40,000.
Wow.
I was off by 4x.
It's good.
But the thing is, if I would have told them $40K, they wouldn't have invested. If I would have believed $40K, I wouldn't have asked for their money. And it doesn't always turn out this way, but fortunately I was delusional enough to believe in $10K, and then it was $40K, and it all sort of worked out, at least for now. But I felt a lot of pressure to deliver $10,000 houses. Yeah. And so we're cutting, and the windows, I go, one pane of glass will be fine in the windows, stuff like that. So we launched in July. July and August were pretty easy. I mean, I'm on vacation going, we're minting money here. Mm-hmm. I'm people are just checking in, everybody's booking it, they seem to like it works. February in New Hampshire was a different story. Mm. And our guests are truly incredible and super generous and kind and forgiving. But they would call and they'd say, we got to the house, we checked in, we love it, it's so beautiful, the design is great. There's no electricity. The pipes are frozen. My sleeve is stuck to the window because it's covered in frost.
Yeah.
And we go we're very sorry.
What do you do?
Yeah. What do you do?
You can't really do anything.
Yeah. So for those, we of course were generous with refunds and did whatever we could for those folks to try to make it up to them. But one of the cool things about the business is, so much of Silicon Valley thought. Is that a thing? Silicon Valley thought is Peter Thiel leading that department, is about iteration. And we can't do everything Silicon Valley does, and we don't want to do everything Silicon Valley does, but we get to iterate, which is super fun. If you build a hotel, we now have 75 houses. If you build a hotel of 75 rooms, you build them all at once and it's done. Mm-hmm. Whereas we got to build these tiny houses one at a time. And so we fix the windows, and we fix this, and we fix that. And we're still fixing stuff. We're moving coat hooks around, and now we're really focused on durability and cost and stuff like that. But it's been fun to be able to iterate on a physical, a building, which not a lot of people have been able to do.
And you treat it like a product. And I liked how you compared a tiny house to a piece of hardware, because that's literally what it is. I mean, we've talked about the design of the houses and how much focus you put in the details, and that's what builds the user experience, right? That's what creates the user experience. So that's really, so when looking at that at hardware, right? But hardware is also really hard to scale. That's what every VC, I'm in VC, that's what they say. It's we don't invest in hardware because it's so hard to scale and it's so hard to do. How did you start scaling it from those first houses in New Hampshire? How did you start building it into what it is now, which is how many houses? 70, 75?
75.
That's crazy. Around this, you guys do.
It's a good question. It has not been that easy. It hasn't been easy. We have a little bit of I think this is ultimately a good thing, but we've always had a little bit of an identity crisis.
Mm-hmm.
Like, are we like a fast growth Silicon Valley VC sort of startup? Are we a real estate developer? Are we a small business? What are we? I always laughed at the HBS. I had a really good experience at HBS, so not to totally trash on them, but like professors would go like, "Is this a lifestyle business?" Would always be like British and like smirking at you for the idea of starting a business that just pays you money to not work that hard.
Yeah.
But there was a real question about like, do we like shoot for the moon here, or do we just try to be like 25 cabins in the Northeast and I like collect a check and chill out? We decided that we actually thought the concept, fueled by our guests, had legs and wanted to grow it, and just talked to everybody we could. And a lot of people said basically what you said, Abby, which is we don't know how to think about it like payback periods, right? Like real estate, our payback periods, real estate investors would go like, that's amazing, we've never seen a payback period like that. And VCs would go like, what's a payback period? Everything's free. Nothing costs money. So the only like wisdom, if I have any on that, is it's a numbers game, and you talk to a lot of people, and fortunately some folks saw what we saw and took a bet on us, and have allowed us to get this far.
That's
but
awesome.
if I go like full on like drunk uncle entrepreneur for like the kids out there, there are other ways to finance businesses than VCs.
Which is,
Sorry, I don't want to pain you.
I think that leads into our next question, though.
Yeah.
Talk us through your experience on Shark Tank. You had a $500,000 offer from Chris Sacca.
Yeah.
And you turned it down. Walk us through that. And I mean, the exposure that you guys have probably gotten off of that, I'm sure has been pretty massive for bookings and getting new customers in the door as well.
Yeah, we were really split on whether to do it. We did it ultimately because we have a weird product for that show, because like if you make widgets, you just print a bunch of widgets and mail them out after people order them. We, at the time we did the show, had 10 cabins and they were booked. And said, well, do we really need all this exposure? And ultimately concluded, well, we don't know when this is going to air, and are we so arrogant as to say we don't want a free national ad whenever it airs? It turns out we didn't really need it, but we did it anyway for that reason. We didn't have that high of hopes of being offered money or taking money from the show, because we knew like there's just a difference in how folks on that show value businesses and what I can now say without being attacked for it, real investors.
Yeah.
Sorry, folks. Sorry, Chris and Kevin and all you others. Value businesses. And I, perhaps hubristically, made that argument on the show, as folks who have seen it have seen, is like, look, I can get a better valuation not on this show. And that wasn't obviously going to be the case, but turned out to be true.
So to follow up with that, your co-founder had referred to Getaway as kind of the anti-Twitter. So having someone like Chris Sacca, who brought Twitter into this world, did you see that as a partnership that might have worked out if it were not to be on the show?
I don't know. One of the funny things about it, like, I guess people know who Chris Sacca is. I didn't really know who he was.
That's great, though. Perfect.
But I did get a really strong impression of him from that time we spent together.
Right.
So maybe. But the thing that I think was prescient about that moment, I was sort of standing with Pete, who said that, and kind of, if I could have kicked him, I would have kicked him, right? Like, what an arrogant thing to say.
Right.
Because he said it in like a you built Twitter and you brought Twitter into this world.
Yeah, repent.
You repent.
Repent.
Yes, exactly. Like, feel guilty.
Now, like, not that long, but what wasn't true then that is true now is, like, I think we're coming to terms with the fact that Silicon Valley is the new, like, tobacco companies, right? Yeah. That they are, like, building these products to capture as much of our attention as possible, and that has negative psychological effects, has negative social effects. And all these stories are coming out about how these Silicon Valley founders and CEOs don't send their kids to computers that have, or schools that have computers. So I think Chris Sacca should repent. That's my conclusion.
So this is the
Fix it, Chris. Hashtag fix it, Chris.
That's
Can I have another beer? Is that going to upset you?
No, get another
All
beer.
right.
But I think that
It's 11 a.m.
Cheers.
It's 12. We're
we made it
At
past
this for a while.
So witching hour.
One more.
So witching hour.
One more,
Cheers.
too.
One cheers.
So what I was going to say is the thing that intrigues me most about what you guys are doing with Getaway, and I think it was a good transition talking about the Twitters of the world and Silicon Valley we've touched on several times, is the value and mission that's really driving the whole thing. And the fact that we're living in a startup world, in a growth company world, where there's so much pressures, and a lot of founders and traditional entrepreneurs are preaching the exact opposite of what you're preaching. We went through a couple of things that you guys value here, where you have no meeting Mondays or no meeting mornings, where you are telling your employees that there is a time for work. And then there's a time where you put your devices away and you worry about yourself and your leisure time, and trying to compartmentalize these different aspects of our lives and not have them overflowing into one another. So can you just touch on the importance of that, once again, what really drives that, and also how you balance this gray line of having employees or people that work for this company that aren't coming back with excuses always and saying, you've told us to put our phones away, when you're trying to still be competitive in a very competitive market.
It's super hard. It's probably, I think it's my biggest leadership challenge. We both have this brand, but more importantly, we have these beliefs that it's really important to have balance in your life. That, it's not just like what we feel. There's scientific studies that show you're more creative, you're happier, you're more productive, you're nicer to be around as a colleague, you're a better parent if you take time, if you don't work all the time, and if you don't let work spill into your personal life. It drives me crazy, these people, I work 80 hours a week. It's like, you don't work 80 hours a week. You're at a client dinner for 3 hours. You can't count answering 3 emails while you weren't paying attention to your kid as work. But that's what we do, because there's this culture of work martyrdom. So we really believe in separating those things. But it does, your question is an astute one, because it doesn't mean we're a laid-back place. It doesn't mean we're a chill place. It doesn't mean we don't care about our goals. We're actually pretty obsessive and neurotic about what are our daily, weekly, monthly, annual, quarterly, annual goals. And are we achieving them? And if we're not achieving them, what can we do to do it? But our philosophy is rooted in the fact that in most companies, we divide the world into, deep work, coordination, and leisure being whatever you do when you're off. And our theory, which I think has some support, is that coordination in most companies, most organizations, takes over way too much. You spend all your day in meetings, answering emails, responding to Slack messages, and then you end up doing the really important stuff, the deep work, writing a report, doing a financial model, whatever it is for you, design, after hours, on nights and weekends, and on your vacation. I have a colleague here who had to be on a conference call while she was on an African safari. Her boss knew she was on a safari. Well, you have to be on this call. That's not good for anybody. So we try to really constrain it. And I think back to our parents' generation who complained about the 9 to 5. If I could work a 9 to 5, literally a 9 to 5, I would take that deal. I would come in at 9 every day. I would leave at 5 every day. If I didn't have to respond to stuff on nights and weekends. And the big thing is, I think I would be as productive as I am today.
But you even, and you were telling us prior to this, that you use actual physical tools, such as pushing your emails after 8 o'clock to 6 a.m. in the morning, and other ways of not only trying to trick your brain or teach your brain to actually check out of work, but actually putting barriers in place that allow you to do that. Do you pass those along to your team members and employees as well?
Yeah, and I think that's an important point, because it's we've all tried to go home and put our cell phone in a drawer, and it doesn't work. At least for me.
I can't do it.
And so you have to, you were talking earlier, you're in Brooklyn, right? You're in this crazy place of New York City and feeling more relaxed because you changed your context. I think those interventions are necessary. Obviously, Getaway is one, and you can book a getaway at getaway.house.
I love it. Plug
it.
Right here.
Getaway's one.
Right here.
Every plug, you have to drink.
Plug.
That's a good. I'll take that deal. That is a low acquisition cost.
Continue plugging.
If anybody listens to this. But you have to make interventions. So I try to set I have a setting in Gmail. You can install it. It's called D&D Mail or something like that, where you can schedule your email not to arrive for certain hours, at nights, on weekends, whenever, vacation. Everybody here is required to set an autoresponder when they go on vacation. We have 20 days mandatory vacation. I don't believe in unlimited vacation. I think it's a psychodrama. But if you don't take your 20 days, you get in trouble. I bought a light phone. Is this a plug? It's not for me. I don't make money on the light phone.
I'll drink anyway.
The light phone is the secondary phone that only does calls. No texts, no emails, no browser. And so the idea is if you want to go walk in Central Park for 4 hours, you take the light phone. If your business burns to the ground, somebody will call you. Is the theory.
Well, so how does that? So I love how you infuse it into company culture, right? Like mandatory vacation, it makes so much sense. And then you also infuse it into the experience that you're delivering with Getaway, because you're delivering that experience to people. So you're giving that to the people who are in your houses. You're giving that to the people who work for you. But how do you balance that within yourself? Because you are the founder, and we all know that founders are devoted 110, 200% to their business, and oftentimes founders, their companies are all that they think about. So internally, and personally and mentally, how do you balance that? Because you also have a responsibility to be that brand for everybody around you. But it's a big juxtaposition between that.
Yeah. The thing I can't do that I genuinely wish I could do is turn my brain off. Like I'm thinking about work kind of all the time, and I don't want to be. It's actually not that productive. The only thing that really solves that is time, right? Like my first day away doesn't really do it. My second day away doesn't really do it. But your third day away, if I go on vacation, like this feeling will wash over me. I think this is true. Different schedules for different people. But you've got to give it a little bit of time. So that's number one. Number two is it's important to me that I, as much as I can, and I screw this up, but be an example. Right, so I just took a 10-day vacation. I felt conflicted about it. I went to Vietnam and Thailand. It was beautiful. I was happy to be there. But there was this thought in the back of my head, what about my investors? What about my team? Are people going to make the right decisions while I'm gone? Are people going to think I'm not as committed as I should be? And I think you just have to push through that. One, for me, to be an example to the team, but two, the deeper example than just doing it is showing that the sky doesn't fall. Like I got back and everything was not just fine, like more had happened. It was better. The team was like, thank you for leaving. We don't care for you very much. And everything's better than it was before.
And you're like, I should do this more often.
Yeah.
So with that said, I mean, for all of the viewers and listeners that we have, what would be the big 3 takeaways you'd want them to get from this as far as work-life balance, balancing the outdoors versus being on technology all the time? What's that big 3 step for them?
Number one, I think, is that, it's admit you have a problem. And we forget that we're in the early days of this thing. We're in the early days of the world has changed as a result of the digital age. And pay attention to how it's affecting you. Pay attention to how it's affecting your kids. Pay attention to how it's affecting your work. And I think most of us, if we reflect, will say, things don't feel that balanced. So that's number one. Number two is you can do something about it. And we've talked about some of those things, but do what works for you. A lot of people, maybe that's meditation, maybe that's going to the spa, maybe it's binge watching Netflix. But how can you add some balance to your life? Balance between city and nature, technology and disconnection, work and leisure. What specific things are you going to do to add a little bit into your life? A little bit of balance into your life. And 3, unfortunately, like anything else in life, it takes effort and time. And you're going to have to iterate your approach to this. But that's okay. And we'll figure it out together. Can I add a 4th now that I'm rambling at you?
Yes.
And those 3 are amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you.
If you are a person that leads an organization or a department, I think it's really important that you think about this, that you set an example, that you build it into your company, and just selfishly because I think it's like the next frontier of like what do people care about in their job. Like it turns out the number one non-monetary thing people care about is flexibility. But it's just, if you want to be competitive, like don't give me chicken wings. Like I don't need free lunch. That's nice, but like isn't it more important and better and more fulfilling to like live a life that isn't, interrupted by work all the time?
I think it's so interesting because I just think that you hit the nail on the head, and just with the experience that you're delivering with Getaways is that you're actually giving people a tool to say, hey, do this, and you give them the place to go, right? But you they go there, they get there, but then you deliver them the experience. You have the lockbox for your phone, right? You don't have the Wi-Fi. You have the bonfire and like the s'mores set, right? I think every single detail, and I would love for you to touch more on this, represents what Getaway's brand is all about. It's not just delivering you a cabin to go to on the weekend. It's saying, no, come here and we will allow you to disconnect and be okay with it and be happy about it and know that it's right for you.
That's the comparison you're making to the product before, though, the way this is treated as a product. Because I go back to this quote. It was the head of product from Reddit who had the quote, our interactions are defined by the platforms we build. So you build these platforms, then you create features in a way you want the platform to be used. So people are getting to these getaway houses, and there's already sort of a defined role of what it should be in their life. It's a place to escape. It's a place to put your phone away and lock that in the box. You're building this experience for them. And so sorry to jump in on that, but I do really see the correlation here between building a product and this whole brand and movement they're creating here with Getaway.
The hard thing about that is yes, we view the product as the moment you hear about us till the moment you come home, right? So it's not, we actually, like, look at this podcast. We've talked very little about, like, we have comfortable queen mattresses
I know, right?
under a leafy canopy in the Catskills. We've talked a lot about, like, what's going on with you in your life and what's going on in the city and work and all this kind of stuff. But that's why we don't, like, you cannot book a getaway on Airbnb, Booking.com, Expedia, Kayak, because we want to control that experience, from booking through the playlists we suggest you listen to in the car to what you see when you enter the house to to trying to get you to do nothing, right? And so I'm glad that message came through to you, that this is about escape and actually being bored. We're trying to, like, get people to, when was the last time you were bored? Like, actually bored. Not, like, kicked back, but, like,
I literally
I don't know
can't
what
remember.
to do.
Or like bored
We're
or
scared
not
of it. We're
bored or
scared
not
of it.
anxious. You know what I mean? Like, I can be trying to relax, but I'll be anxious and I'll be thinking and I'll be worried. But I've never, I don't remember the last time I've been, it was a year ago in Costa Rica, where I could be bored, just not doing anything and actually not thinking about something for a second, not thinking about work, not thinking about something else I should be anxious
pretty
about.
rare.
Yeah.
And I don't think we should all be bored all the time, but I think it's a thing worth thinking about if we want to lose. It's a thing worth thinking about. Do we want that moment in our life sometimes? It's worth thinking about what happens when that moment arrives and what's on the other side of it. And so it's easy to say all that stuff. The hard part is almost every day somebody in my life, a new team member, a consultant, an advisor, a board member says, like, why don't we, like, sell horseback riding lessons? Why don't we, like, do fly fishing retreats? Why don't we, like, go, like, do a thing with the vineyard down the street? All of which sound lovely. Like, I would love to go fly fishing from the back of the horse while drinking a bottle of rosé.
Hey,
But
sounds majestic.
Hair flowing in the wind.
Yeah, sounds very
want a
majestic.
picture. But I think as just a business person and I guess a marketer, that cuts into the message that we're trying to put into the world, which is we think it's really important that you just take a moment. Just stop doing things.
Yeah.
And you stay authentic to that in whatever you do.
A lot of authenticity.
We try to, yeah.
A lot of
Yeah.
authenticity.
No, that's great.
I'll jump in with my last question here.
Yeah.
I mean, once again, thank you so much for this. This has been such a cool experience, and this place is incredible, and I can't wait to actually join you guys on a getaway trip with hopefully my team members here. But what's next for you? Where is Getaway 5 years from now? And to take that a step further, what's really the mark you're looking to leave on the world with this project and yourself in general?
I will give you what sounds like a CEO answer that isn't a CEO answer, which is Maybe it's a CEO answer. I'm a CEO and I'm
you are.
answering.
Damn right.
Own it.
I love it.
I'll drink to that.
We don't and have never been in this to sell nights.
Yeah.
Or like, could I like throw these houses on Expedia and rent out nights in the Catskills? Probably yes.
Yeah.
Probably that's an okay business. I think life is short and I don't really care that much about doing that.
Yeah.
I care about doing all the stuff we talked about. And so does the team here. And if we believe in it and care about it and think it matters, then we want to bring it to more people.
Yeah.
And therefore the 5-year plan, the forever plan is how do we provide this experience in even bigger and better ways to more people?
Yeah.
And to make that sound not like nothingness, the challenges to that are frequently people come to us and say, well, would you like to do this with us? I bought a roadside hotel. I would like to do a rock and roll themed hotel. Would you like to put tiny houses there? And sometimes I go like, it'd be fun I like rock and roll in hotels. I would like to do that. But that's a distraction from providing this to more people. And whenever I am at risk of being distracted, which is somewhat frequently, we'll get these notes. Honest to God, when we get these, we're really obsessive about feedback. We get like paragraphs and paragraphs from people every day with feedback by email. We get handwritten notes. And one a few weeks ago from a woman said, I've come to really hate my job. My husband has come to really hate his job. I'm spending a lot of every day crying. It's affecting our marriage. And thank you, Getaway, for a couple of days away from that.
I love that.
No, and we're not going to solve her work life. We're not going to solve her marriage, but that's not my words. That's not me saying that's her.
You're allowing people to breathe for at least a couple moments and escape the everyday anxieties.
And
connect with reality.
Yeah, and like impacting people on that level where, yes, you can't fix it, but you can be there for them to escape and help them figure it out, which is so important, right?
Give them the tools to allow them to escape.
Yeah.
Which is the coolest part.
I love that. Well, this has been so amazing, Jon. You were working on something so great, so authentic, and so raw and transparent and unfiltered. We really, really thank you and appreciate you for bringing us here, bringing us to our own little tiny house,
This is great.
and telling us your story. So thank you guys so much. To all the listeners, we're here in New York. A couple more days. We'll talk to you soon. Signing off.
Signing off, guys.
Signing off.
Cheers.